I would. All right, so go ahead, we'll start the hearing. Today is May 1st, 2025. This is the Readfield Board of Appeals. We're meeting today for routine yearly voting of officers. First, approval of the minutes from the last hearing, which was a while ago, 23rd of September. And then we'll get to the variance hearing of the domains. They're going for a riding arena that's just over 40 feet. Our ordinance says the height restriction is 35. So those are the issues for today's hearing. So far, we have 6 of the 7 Board of Appeals members here. We have John Lewin, Bruce Burgoyne, myself, Will Gunny Holmes, Les Priest, Holly Rumlaw, and Al Kusunka. That's how you say it. Okay. Where Henry Whitmore indicated he's coming and he might just be a few minutes late. We need 4 out of the 7 for a quorum today, so we have that. So we'll go forward to the hearing and the meeting. Minutes from the last hearing, which was the Chamberlain variance from September of 2023, were attached to the email that was sent out to the Board of Appeals members, and it's on the website, the town website for the Board of Appeals. I have reviewed them. Holly, you've reviewed them?
Yes.
And who wrote them, Holly?
Angelica down in the front office.
Okay. So have all the board members reviewed the minutes from the last hearing who were at the last hearing? Okay. So I will move to adopt the minutes from the 2023 meeting as they are written. Anybody want to second that motion? Second. Thank you. Any discussion on adopting those minutes as they are?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did we have a letter from the neighbor?
From the Chamberlains?
No, from the neighbors, Chamberlain's neighbor. It was a letter that was written, I thought it was read,
I think it was in, yes.
but it doesn't mention that in the minutes.
So, yeah, the minutes are a rough kind of copy. We currently have a recording of the Zoom. So if you really want to know what happened at the hearing,
It's just, I would think it would be part of the document.
we don't necessarily include everything in the minutes that happened at the hearing. Some things are in, some things are not. I'm not 100% sure of the minutes purpose now that we have an actual recording of the hearings by Zoom. So
Will minutes come out again in written form, or it will be digital?
yes, the minutes would come out as if we approve them, they would be official at that point.
We meet tonight, will be out in written form.
Yes, 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 good question. Any other discussion on the meeting minutes from the 2023 meeting?
I'll abstain from this one.
Bruce Burgoyne, you weren't a member at that point?
Right.
All right, all in favor of adopting the meeting minutes from the 2023 hearing as they are written? Raise your hand. All right, any opposed? No, looks like it carries on a vote of 5-0 with 1 abstention. The second matter is the voting of officers. We're supposed to do that in the first meeting of the fiscal year. I think we're in a fiscal year that started in June 1st of last year. This is our first meeting. We currently have a chair and a secretary. Is that correct?
Yeah, we put off doing the vice chair because we didn't have enough people.
Right. Okay, so we have a vice chair, a chair, and a secretary. Those are our 3 officers. Holly is currently our secretary. I'm currently the chair. We have no vice chair. I'll put out there to start the conversation. I'm willing to remain chair. I'm also willing to step aside if anybody else wants to.
I will remain as chair, he does a great job. I knew you'd jump in on that.
All in favor of me remaining as chair, raise your hand. Any opposed? No? Okay, so that carries 6-0. I would nominate Holly to remain as secretary.
I would second that.
All in favor, raise your hand.
I guess I'll stay too.
Thank you.
Anybody against? No, that carries on a motion of 6-0 as well. So now we have vice chair. Anybody interested in being vice chair? I don't, you would theoretically step in to do the hearings if I were not present.
I nominate John Bloom. He has a look on his face right now.
I was gonna mention, Al, was that something you would be interested in?
Good.
I nominate Al as vice chair.
And Andrew the second.
Okay, all in favor of Al Pasunka being vice chair, raise your hand.
Thank you, Al, for serving.
Anybody against?
Because I'm closest to the town offices that morning.
So that motion carries, we're gonna say 6-0 with Al abstaining. So now we have 3 officers. Okay, so now we will move on to the variance appeal application of the Ducharmes. We have their application material that was emailed around. And we'll take their their oral statements here today, and everything in the 16 pages that was part of the application from the clerk will come into the hearing record as evidence. So we'll hear from the applicants, we'll hear from anybody else who wants to talk about the issues. And then, once we've heard everyone who wants to speak or submit written materials here today, then we'll close the evidence portion of the hearing, and we'll go into deliberation. It'll be a public deliberation, we'll be here, but people who are not members of the Board of Appeal will not be able to participate at that point. So you'll just be observers at that point, the 4 people in the room. And the 4 people in the room are our code enforcement officer, Chip Stevens, the 2 applicants, and
Susan, yeah.
okay. And we have no one on Zoom, is that my understanding?
That's a good day.
Okay, doesn't look like anybody's joining us by Zoom. So we'll deliberate, and I assume that we will come to a decision here tonight. We'll issue a written decision in the days after, but the effective date of the decision will be today if we come to a decision today at this hearing. Anybody in the room have any questions about the process for this variance request? Okay. So we'll go ahead and get the statement of the domains. Cindy and Evan Dumaine, you can rest assured that your letter, along with all the supporting documents, are in the hearing record. We have read that, each member. So you don't necessarily have to repeat everything. You can tell us what you would like to about your variance application.
Well, I guess I'll just kind of summarize what we've already put out. We have a horse race facility here in town, and we're requesting a indoor riding arena because we don't have a safe place to exercise horses in the inclement weather that Maine often has. And the size of the structure is 5 feet 1 inch taller than is allowable without the variance. but it's necessary to be that height for snow load for our area and to be a safe structure. I think you know everything else, I'm not sure.
No, I agree. I think, I don't think that the facts are very much in question here, like what we're dealing with. Is there anything else you'd like to add at this point?
Mostly it's the safety concern for not only the horses, but for, their owners as well.
Okay,
And right now, we have 11 different boarded horses, so that number could grow, and, people want to be able to use their horses, exercise them as much as they can, and we have with our outdoor spot that we have is very limited.
okay.
And
Snow and ice and mud. and
unfortunately,
great.
we get more freezing rain now than we get. Pure snow this last winter wasn't necessarily as bad as the 2 or 3 before it, but we have experienced a lot of freezing rain, which causes a lot of
Ice.
nice issues, especially for the horses.
So in the nice weather, you're riding horses, you and your customers are riding horses outdoors, just on the property?
Correct.
The property is, how many, it was in your interior, how many acres is it?
We're just shy of 10 there.
Okay.
something, yeah.
Who lives in the residence on the land?
Nobody's currently living on the residence. We were, but it's being renovated right now.
Okay, are you planning to move back there?
We're actually moving a farm manager in.
So an employee of the business?
Yes.
Okay. And you've operated the business for over 15 years?
We have had, horse farm, it was a break in between, so we had a horse farm on the property for,
About 3 years.
it was a while, and then, there was a 5-year break in the middle where we ran a disc golf course on the property, and then we went back to horses.
Okay. Okay,
COVID changed a lot.
COVID changed a lot of things.
sure. Is this your only means of income, or do you have other,
This is my
Jobs.
primary employment, yes.
but not yours?
No.
And what other buildings are on the land other than the residence?
There are run-in sheds for the horses. There's shelters that they can go in and out as they please.
How many?
We have 2. We have 2 wooden shelters and one of the shelter logic, like tarp shelter.
Okay,
And then we have 2 equipment sheds that, people keep their saddles and bridles and horse equipment in.
okay.
And then we have a tarp building, a large tarp building, shelter logic that we keep hay in.
Every aspect.
Jump in anytime.
Okay. So what is the structure made of? What is the composition of the building? It's all aluminum framing, and then the top of it is like
It's a
a
canvas,
canvas.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like a canvas, so it allows light, it's a white.
allows
canvas.
natural light in, and it's quiet when the snow comes off.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a much more natural looking environment on the inside.
And our plan is to put it, I don't know if it's a piece of
I
property.
do have,
How big is the building?
it's 84 feet, 4 inches wide on the exterior and 140 feet long.
And our plan is to put it in the back corner of the lot up there. 84 by 114?
140.
140. 84.
Can I ask a question? So I'm assuming that you either were working with a builder or a supplier on the building itself. Is the height a factor of the circumference that you're planning? There are other options as well?
I did reach out and ask if there were other options, and he said that there weren't with our snow load, just the way that they have to design the trusses and I don't have all the specific information as to why, but he just
Yeah.
told me that, that's what was required to make it a safe structure for us.
Okay, I mean, I guess what I'm getting to, and this is technical and you won't know the answer to this, is whether or not the circumference of the building drives the height.
Right.
Right.
Well, I did let him know that there was, we had the 35-foot in the variance, and was there something else? And I guess I assumed that he would tell me if we could change the building to fit within the ordinance.
So I did come in and look at, did some more drawings with this, so are you wedded to the 85 feet width? I mean, that's what's causing the height because of the snow load and the trusses and everything. Is that, I imagine if it's narrower, it necessarily doesn't have to be as high, although with people on horses, I see on the sides, it goes up, what's the height before the roof starts to curve? Do you know that?
I think it's 14. I think it's 14 feet.
And the base is concrete, is that right?
It'll be one row of the,
The concrete blocks.
Those blocks that they bring in, and then the structure will sit down. on
Also,
top.
it's not a pour, it's not a,
No, it's not.
It's
even-
considered a
it's not
temporary
even really considered
agricultural building,
structure.
because it can be moved.
Yeah, there won't be any concrete poured. They'll bring those blocks in, they'll set those.
And then they anchor it to the blocks.
Blocks. That gives you enough feet because the side of
yeah,
that first truss doesn't start until like, I think it's 12 feet up, and then that actual sitting on top of the concrete block gives you the height that you need to
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 ride,
ride
and have a
next to
horse
it.
and a rider without having an issue.
I asked a general question, because, so we came up with 35 feet for the maximum height.
It's just in our ordinance, I'm sure. Yeah, there's a lot of homes and properties higher than 35 feet.
Including my own, well, one, inside measure, but anyways. So you don't know, does it have to do with the fire department or ladders, height? or-
I suspect fire department. You'll see that in Article 7 of our land use regulations, it's 35 feet for all districts. Maximum height of any structure in any district, it's not just commercial.
No?
I believe it's character of the town is the reason for it.
Not the fire.
I don't believe it was the fire department, no.
Good question. The purpose of the building itself, you say you have 11 people who you are customers of yours. The primary use of this, you have classes, open to the public. How is that going to reach out to other than customers you have?
plan on holding like a events.
Yeah, we'll have clinics and like riding clinics, and we'll be able to have like instructors come in. And we aren't able to do that now because they won't book with you, because if it gets rained out, they're out of the job for the
They
day.
won't book from November to
They won't
May,
book
if
at
you
all.
don't have an indoor.
Most clinicians I can't book.
Those clinics, is that what you're saying?
Clinicians, like instructors,
Sure.
we can't have at our farm because if it rains that day, we don't have an indoor space, the day's canceled and they don't get paid for the day.
Right.
So most clinicians require an indoor arena to be able to schedule with them.
You have 11 boarded horses, how many human customers do you have in a year recently?
Well, the horses live there all the time, they belong to the people who own them, so we have 11 horses and 10, like one of them's ours.
Okay.
So then we have 9 people, because Michelle has 2 horses, so we have 9 people that own those horses.
Okay. And those
The
are,
same
those that you
people.
have not, you don't have like other customers coming in for other things?
No, we don't give lessons to the
We don't
general
do
public, all the horses are privately owned.
If
And, you know,
anybody wants to have somebody come in, they're allowed to bring their trainer in, or we don't.
Or they can bring their family members to enjoy their horse.
So obviously with this opportunity to have this structure, that's gonna allow you to do different things with your business, right?
Yeah,
That, I can certainly appreciate having a large enough facility that will accommodate what you've designed it for to accomplish what you want to do with your business. And they're obviously a permitted use in this area, right? Permitted, everything that. they're-
Agriculture in the commercial zone, this is a commercially zoned property?
Yes. It's both.
We're village residential.
Can you do a farm in a commercial zone property? I do too.
Yeah, so it just seems, obviously, my background is was in the car industry and, you know, building on and adding stuff as the business grew. And, you know, obviously codes and guidelines and parameters and, you know, it was necessary. And for me to add additional square footage and additional space for the business that was growing. I certainly understand what you're trying to accomplish. I think it's a nice idea that you're trying to do that in Readfield. And that you are presently in business in Readfield.
Thank you. Enjoy. What do you? Quite a while, so.
Your cover letter indicates that the arena and this variance will help support the continued success and growth of your business. How long has your business been growing?
Yeah, continually since we, opened it.
We started with 3 horses. One was our own.
Yeah, and now we have 11 and we have another one moving in next week.
And you say the continued growth of your business the continued success of your business.
Mhm.
What do you mean by continued success? How do
Well,
you define your business as being successful in the last 5 years?
well, being able to offer things that, of course, people would like to have, like events and clinicians come in and lessons and, just different opportunities. A lot of people will not board in a facility that doesn't have an indoor riding arena because there's many months out of the year in May that you cannot ride your horse safely. So for us to be able
We
to,
actually had a boarder leave last year.
because we didn't
She
have.
wanted to ride her horse through the winter.
Yeah.
Can't guarantee that that's always a availability.
It's Mother Nature's choice.
Because there's only so much you can do your outdoor arena. You can't like pepper it with salt and stuff like that, because it changes the mixture of it all. It's kind of
I just can't keep up with it.
delicate
And it's just,
mixture.
So I have a question on that. So you've 11 customers right now, including yourself this morning. Is there a potential you're shooting for, by offering riding? I mean, does it mean you will have 15 customers or
we built our
21?
farm for 24 horses.
For 24 horses.
They live on a natural.
And so to gain the potential of those additional ones, you feel you need to do something that would attract.
Yep, I do. We've had lots of tours with people over the years and have indicated we would love to be here, but without an indoor arena, we just can't do it. So it's definitely a driving factor for horses.
Thank you.
When I met my wife Cricket, she had 2 horses, so I'm somewhat familiar a little bit with horses and having the horses and then being in the arena and with people and everything. It's just such a wonderful, wonderful thing that people do with the horses and the people. And so I'm very much in favor of anything that we can do to help a growing business here in Readfield with such a nice agricultural and animal, centered business.
Thank you.
I kind of know where it's to be situated, near the school, it's up away from the road a little, well, I don't know exactly, what it is, but what is it now, pasture or is it wooded?
It's partially cleared and partially wooded right now.
the back of our property where you can see the pasture when you drive by drops off significantly, and then it drops off two more
Okay.
times.
Yeah.
As it goes down, and we have built, they live on a natural habitat tract, so we built that all around the property. So what you see in the center is really just a play area for the people to come and use the horses when they can, and they live on a natural track where they can go and live freely in their herd together. They have hay stations where they can get hay, there's water in one area, and they have the shelter that, there's everything that they have is free choice.
And it's 2 miles long.
The path,
Yes,
And it winds down and switchbacks and goes through the woods and around the pastures.
so mostly what you see from the road is all the play area with the track that goes by, that's near the road and then near the school. And what we're proposing is to sit way back in the back.
The back corner on the school side of our property, and so it's partially a cleared piece. It'll come out a little bit onto our grass area that you see now. And then it'll be mostly back behind. It's probably, I would say, half and half wooded right now.
The top ridge up there is most of our property that's down there is about 60 or 70-year-old deciduous trees that have grown up and had a great big canopy. But that top ridge is mostly all awful stuff that has dying tops that are, a lot of that first edge of something that is gonna come out. Because there's a lot of.
Yeah.
Anything that's.
Yeah.
But mostly it's all pasture there, and then there's, like I said, it's like 3 tiers down back that it drops off significantly.
And then it's all the way behind, but
That's
yeah,
all,
but I'd
yeah.
say, for your question, I'd say where it's going is half open and half wooded right now.
And from South Road, from what you're saying, that the structure would be actually lower, well, it wouldn't, it's not up on the ridge, it's behind the ridge, right?
It's gonna sit up on the top and the back.
Oh, it is on
It's
the,
gonna kind of face Kent's Hill, really, is what it's gonna face. When you sit up there, you'd be surprised how clear a shot you have of Kent's Hill from, that land actually goes up quite a little bit.
I have one, just,
So if you know where the school's like baseball field
yes,
is, it'll be behind, like further back into like the woods from that. And then coming out diagonally, like not along the property line, like where they are, it's gonna be like turned to look at Kent's Hill. It'll come out diagonally like into the grass area a little bit.
I have an observation, that an awful lot of, land is being devoted to solar. And it's reducing the, availability for other uses for many different things. So I think this is a nice idea to be able to have the land used for farming and a business and things like that, other than some of the other things that are taking place. And all the open flat space seems to be going into the solar arena, which I think solar is a great idea. We're all paying for it. And it has markedly changed the value of land. And I think Les would probably agree that we've seen quite a, used to be you drive by, like going into Winthrop, over on the side, there's a lot over there. It would be maybe $40,000 or $50,000, and now it's 80 or 90.
So solar driven up there in Texas.
Well, if you see any, if you see a flat, beautiful piece of land, right, it's.
All you gotta do is drive out 219, where all those hayfields used to be.
Yeah, so,
All those hayfields out there by the old chicken barn are now all also. All those hayfields are gone.
and,
It's kind of sad.
well, yeah, so I mean, I think that, and I think one of the criteria that we do have a chance to look at is the reasonable return aspect.
that's probably the only criteria.
And I would say that makes a big, I think there's a strong case that, it makes a significant difference in what they can do with their value of their property. With, moving forward. So I do think that that is a consideration for us that we can consider because of the return on this, the land.
Yeah, that will be, I assume that's what the entire discussion will be about, is the land, cannot yield a reasonable return. That's the verbiage. That's the hardest element of a variance. And unless the applicant can get over that, I don't see any point in talking about the other elements.
This is why I was asking what I didn't go back, I didn't walk them, so it's half open pasture, grass, weeds, whatever, and then half wooded, and I guess you could turn that into hayfield, I guess cut all the trees and.
Well, 80 years ago was the cow pasture.
The whole
The
property.
whole property was all cattle. And then the farm house went in. That was a assisted living home. That burned in 1946.
They bulldozed it down.
They bulldozed it down there.
Cleaning it up.
My mother sent a picture of my great aunt, who was overseas in the military at the time, of probably 10 or 12 people sitting down on the South Road in chairs watching the place burn. Because then, watching the place burn. So,
Without getting into too much specifics, are you able to make a profit in your business?
Minimal profit now.
the horse businesses.
You know, I think, when you're in business and you have competitors and you have competition, and, the facility makes a big difference with whatever it is that's being done. If you take the car industry, for instance, they are constantly remodeling the Subaru drives, the Honda drives, the Mazda dealership. And they're being remodeled because the manufacturers are requiring that for it to be the state of the art or whatever. And there's a lot that goes with the success of those businesses. That's why the dealers are spending considerably on their facilities. And competition and availability and location are all factors in whatever it is as far as the business is concerned. So there's been a decline in the number of facilities that are, like, for instance, there was a big facility in Manchester that was a big horse facility. And, yeah, and it's now, I think it's a combination of rentals.
Mostly rentals.
And things like that. And I don't know, so I mean, I think that there is a good case that for those.
So let me jump in there, Mr. Bluen. It sounds like we're jumping into a discussion. Do we have any other questions for the applicants
I'm sorry.
before we go into deliberation?
So, I don't know the name of it, the place on Route 41, the Mountain Glen line, the big, all right?
None of you.
Could you compare what we want to do like to them in terms of, would you be more, of a, what's the name of the word, bargain, I don't know if bargain is, but, that seems to be a fairly, is that a year-round indoor? No, they've got pastures as well, right? What's
They
the-
have a year-round indoor arena at their facility. I guess I'm not sure, what's the comparison that you might?
It's a wooden structure where it's actually, the horses live also inside
In that,
that as well. So it's not, our structure is just, it's not even really a permanent structure, it's basically just.
It's just indoor, a space to ride inside, right? So it's like, it's like,
Unheated.
it's unheated. It's, yeah, it's a fabric enclosed building so that we can keep the ground from being too slippery or icy or, so that we, of course,
We'll have doors on either end, so we can get, but other than that.
perhaps I should have asked
Lights,
it differently. Do you feel you're losing business, like, to them because you don't have the?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We've had boarders leave because we don't have an indoor riding arena, and we've had many people tell us they'd love to come with and be at our farm, but they can't because we don't have an indoor riding arena. And we have people that tell us they can't come because we aren't able to offer lessons and events and people to come in and teach because we don't have it. It makes a really big difference.
And economically speaking, you say you have 11 now and you're barely making it with 11. And that number stays at 11 and costs go up to a point where you can't make it. And basically you have to close your doors, go out of business because you can't do it without some help.
Right, absolutely. And hay just keeps going up. Great.
Yeah,
keeps
food,
going up.
food is the majority of the expense. And it's a constant, it's a constant.
And having, to me, having the buzz of educational purposes as well, so that you have something that people will come in from outside of this town, from other towns, other communities, other counties,
Right.
to Readfield. Readfield's a cool place, lived there
It is.
most of my adult life, and, you know, everybody seems to have the same thing, you live in Readfield, same thing, it's a wonderful place to live. By bringing people in from outside those areas, they can see it for themselves. And this is just one way of doing it.
Any other questions for the applicants? Applicants, anything else you'd like to add? Does anybody else like to add any testimony?
I just have one concern, and I've talked to them about that concern, but I think the town just needs to be on board with that. Chip probably cringed when he saw me walk in the office in here, but I have drainage problems, and it's the drainage coming down the South Road on the ditch that lines their property. There's a culvert that goes across the road onto my property, and it often floods, and I feel I can't take any more water. And I've talked to them about it, and they're very fine people, you can see, and they said they'll work with me, you know, so my property doesn't flood. But I'm still concerned that if the town doesn't do something for that water that's already down, if there's a barn here, and there's more coming down, I believe the town needs to do something with all that water. That's my concern, I would just say that. And again, they're telling me that they will work with me, but I don't know how much I can do if I'm the only source of escape for that water.
And are you in a butter?
I'm across the
Yeah,
street.
she's across the
street.
Can you repeat your name?
Susan Holyer.
Can I,
Oh, yes, you're the first butter on the list.
can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so from what I understand, the concrete block is, how many inches is concrete block? Is it-
2 feet.
2 feet, so it's 2 feet. So the structure is how many feet tall? That we're talking about, the difference in the variance?
5 feet, 40 and.
It's gotta be 38 feet and 1 inch, I would think.
Okay. And so,
The
I'm
2 feet.
just trying to get an idea of what the structure is that they're putting on top of the concrete. So the concrete's 4 feet up,
2
2
feet.
feet.
2 feet.
So it makes the structure 38.1 at the peak, I would assume.
It's 12 feet where it's best pitch towards the
Yeah, 12,
Yeah.
14 feet on the block.
Yeah, so
So 12 feet on the,
12 foot and then,
above the block.
yes.
yes.
And could you build a smaller structure that would be under 35 feet?
It would accommodate what we need to do now.
How,
You
how
might be
big,
able
how big would the smaller structure that is under 35 feet or under, how big would that be?
I would have to find out. They didn't give me an option of one being available.
Why is this size the only size will work?
Because I can fit a minimum, like I can fit 3 people working with their horses or 4 people maximum at a time.
Okay.
If I get smaller than that, I might be able to have 1 or 2 in there at a time.
Any other questions for any of the witnesses so far?
I just clarify, I thought originally you said it was 40 feet and then like 40 feet 1 inch or
It
something.
is with on the block.
On the blocks.
So when it's finished, that's how tall it will be,
Right,
right?
right. I misunderstood, I guess, you were talking about just the, you were talking about the volume and the.
Well, yeah, what I was trying to see what I could understand is, you know, the structure is certain, and then there's the block that it sits on top of.
But they need the height for people on horses to get from there. No, that's.
We have spoken at length with our neighbor, and we are very concerned to try to make sure that we can alleviate any of her water issues.
And if we have to, I mean, we're happy to use our excavation team, the raise, and have them correct the issue. And we'll pay for it.
Our only concern is that when that drainage was put in there's a huge ditch on our side of the road, and the culvert pipe that's there literally goes right next to her
Right, and
driveway on
there's
the
no
other
ditch.
side. And there's
For her.
nothing was really done on, and we're fine to take care of it ourselves, but nothing was really done on her side of the road to ever accommodate the amount of water that.
It comes all the way down South Road and then crosses to her.
And we get all the
backyard.
water from the school, because when the ball field was built, it was built up. So we get all the snow, any snow coming off the school property, all comes on our property, and everything goes down that ditch.
And it goes across onto her property. and
So
then
any
back
snow melt that comes off the school is all coming to us, and eventually it all goes.
Going to her.
And they've got other ditches down the South Road that when you look at them, they're never full, they're not even a quarter full even. But everything shoots over to me, and that's not their fault, I mean, that's not their fault, but the ball field, I think, was changed in 2004, I mean, there was a lot more water at that point. We had somebody come in and dig more,
We've had to reroute the water just to get the horse track at the bottom where it goes, turns and goes up along the road. Until last year, when we had the raise come in and fix it, it just washed that whole section right out until the snow load was gone and all the frost was out of the ground. The water really runs down right across our property and all ends up in that ditch.
and the town has always told me that the culvert has always been there. So they can't do anything, but the lay of the land has changed, you know, just with the school doing things. And I feel somebody should take that into account for them and probably for me as well.
Maybe a select board issue. But we take the testimony as evidence for this. Ms. Boyer, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just, am concerned about drainage. I hope that, you know, I don't think it should be on them. I think it should be.
And is this project gonna increase or decrease or affect the drainage in any way? Do you know?
By what you mean?
I'm asking Ms. Boyer,
Oh.
do you know if this project is gonna affect the drainage in any
I
way?
assume they've got to drain the water away from the. I don't know.
Okay, your suspicion is that it will?
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add, Ms. Boyer?
No, I think that's it.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Boyer?
No, I think we've talked a lot about it. We'd love to help her with the situation.
And Cindy and Evan, Jermaine, do you have anything else you'd like to add that you haven't already told us?
So,
Board of Appeals members, do you have any questions for anybody? Shall we go into deliberations? That would mean ending the taking of evidence, and we'll go into deciding the case. I move that we end taking of evidence and we'll go into deliberations. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand.
Who seconded?
I did. So, all six of us, approve the motion, so the evidence is closed. We have the written materials that have been submitted, as well as the oral evidence we've received here this evening. So again, we're just gonna chat amongst ourselves, and the four, participants or attendees, will just watch us, listen. So, Let me say, first off, I totally agree with the, I think every person here, all 6 of us on the Board of Appeals support the project, it sounds great. Especially concur with John Lewin, eloquently stated how good this seems, not only for the applicants, but for each. So for deciding a variance, our ordinance is similar to most of the ordinances in the state of Maine. And we have 4 things we have to consider. It's
I have it someplace.
71, and our Board of Appeals ordinance is 71. So the first one is the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. So yield a reasonable return is a term of art. It's gotten legal gloss, so it's gotten decisions from our Supreme Court of Maine, the highest court in the land, not a district court, not a superior court. And reasonable return. Here are three cases. Reasonable return amounts, if you cannot get a reasonable return from the property, that amounts to a practical loss of all beneficial use of the land. That's Greenberg versus Tobias, Maine decision from 1994. So to add some context to that, a reasonable return is not tantamount to a maximum return. That's Perrine versus Town of Kittery. That's a decision from 1991. And then I think it's the case that most appeals board members are going to cite. It's the Twig versus Town of Kennebunk from 1995. That case, the facts were there was a piece of land on a lake, and the guy could row his boat to his land. He could not drive to it. He could row his boat, pull his rowboat up onto the land and store his oars and some nautical equipment. And the court held that is a reasonable return. If you can row your boat up onto your land and camp on it, that's a reasonable return. You don't
What did the guy want to do? I'm sorry, what did the guy want to build or do?
I think he wanted to build a big house.
But you have no access to the property.
And I could be wrong on the road, but the court said if you can row your boat, in their words, if you can row your boat there and store some stuff on it and recreate on it, you can camp. The court ruled that the town of Kennebunk was not wrong in denying that variance request. And so getting a variance is very hard. So as much as we support a lot of things that go on, this is very hard. And in this case, we have a piece of property with an active business going on. It not only has a business, but it also has a residence on it. I mean, even if you took this barn and just took it out of the equation, that property satisfies a reasonable return by the courts right now, without any writing arena involved. And additionally, in this case, we don't have evidence that this is the only size building that could be built that could ride horses. The applicants indicated this is the size that they would like because they can get 3 horses, and this is the size that they want. It's big enough. But I think common sense, and we don't have evidence that a smaller riding facility could be built for 1 horse. And that would bring extra business into a property that already has a business and a residence on it. So this property is way up here. And they're so far above this threshold of being unable to get a reasonable rate of return on your money. So unless you guys are seeing something I'm not, this is a really tough lift for the applicants in this case.
The case you cite, that was not a commercial property, however, right?
Right, it was residential.
And what is meant by the land in question, the land in
The
question?
property, the 8.53 acres on South Road. It's not the business, it's not the business.
Not the specific site of, in this case, so it's an entire piece of property, or not? The land in question is the entire 10 acres, not the site for the,
Well, so the property in question right now has a residence, it has several outbuildings, it has a path, it has everything that's there. That's the property, everything is on the 8.53 acres.
I asked because it says the land in question. Well, that could be,
I see what you're saying. I'm pretty sure it is the property, the land. It is, we're differentiating that from a business. And so, you know, if you had a corporation or whatever, an LLC on the land, I would think that would be different. But this is the property that our ordinance applies to.
But our ordinance is applying to a zoned piece of property.
Yes, some commercial.
Right.
And that also, it's a commercially zoned lot. It's on the South Road, it's not far from 17, which is not far from 202, which is not far from the interstate. I mean, this is a valuable piece of property as a hayfield, without any barn, without any residence, without any outbuildings. So if we just let this took all the trees, or even just left the trees and just hayed the existing part of this property, that would be a reasonable rate of return under what the courts look at. So I'm with everyone. I think it'd be a great idea, but it's just gonna be 135 feet. Thank. I'm definitely open to be told, Will, you're way out in left field, you're wrong.
So let me ask a question, okay, because, you know, our position is to review the information from the previous planning board.
Not in this case. We're reviewing it. We're the first ones.
So I thought we reviewed decisions that were already done by the planning board.
That's one of our duties. The other one are variances. And we're
So
saying,
variance doesn't have to go to the planning board first.
and there's a reason for that. Because the legislature, the state legislature wanted to make it hard to get variances. They didn't want you to get a bite at the apple at the planning board.
Right.
And then maybe you got denied, so now you go to the Board of Appeals, maybe you get denied, now you go to Superior Court for an appeal. They specifically said, look, we gotta start with the Board of Appeals.
Okay.
Because we wanna make this hard.
Because sometimes, you know, we're reviewing only what, whether or not the planning board made an error or not, that's what we were looking at.
So this is different.
Okay, so, okay,
And as part of this decision, what we need to do is come up with the findings of fact. And those are, the property is at 52 South Street.
Right.
The property is 8.53 acres big. The property is half open and it's half wooded. These are facts that we're gonna list in our discussion. The property has a business on it right now with 9 horses. The property has a residence. These are the facts. We get to make these up. These are the facts that the planning board would normally be making up and we review. So we're gonna make those up as part of our decision today.
so if the, so who, is it the select board, who is it that determines the commercial height of a structure in?
That's select board. Yeah, that's our land use ordinance. So, you know, we vote on it as.
Right, so, you know, at one point, at Blues Motors, my dad wanted to build a garage to put his cars in, okay? His personal cars, and we had literally acres and acres and acres of cars.
Right away, that.
Right, right. But, we were a special exception permit, so we had to go get a permission to do it, because car dealers were not allowed to exist anywhere in particular, so we were a special exception. So anytime we wanted to do it, we had to go and do that. Now, that didn't stop many other people building things and doing things and other car dealerships. And a lot of things are done, but, you know, that was not the case. But they wanted us to close off entrances because they were trying to work on the third bridge, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to build something, to put 3 or 4 cars in, and we had acres and acres of land. So what we had to actually do is we had to go to the city council.
Right.
And we had to become a permitted use. And then we, as car dealers, would be subject to the same thing everybody else was. If we met the setbacks and we had this and that. So that was kind of, so in the event that, the procedure to increase the height to make it satisfactory for their business application would be that if they're not successful in this regard, they would, this have
They could
right?
ask the select board to raise that.
To raise.
And we probably have to vote on it in a general election
Okay,
as residents.
okay.
Well, we do that in June or something. Might not get it on this ballot, but try it and see if they'll, raise it for next year.
I'm just trying to understand the procedure.
Good question. You cite these higher court decisions made, right, based on those facts.
Right, based on this language.
Right.
Yeah,
And those, and you cite that based for this particular cause here. So why do we even exist or meet on this? Because the facts are already there, say, okay, because of this, you can't do it. So does this board, does this group have, I guess, have the power to make that exception?
You absolutely, you haven't. We're gonna put it to a vote at the end. We're gonna say, do we want to grant the variance or not? And
Yeah, this
if you do not, it's totally your choice. I'm not telling you how to vote. But I would like you to tell me how a vote for this variance complies with the law. I don't mind you voting one way or the other, but it is so hard to get a variance. And this property has so much going for it already. You would have to, I would love to hear the explanation. And I think the explanation would be, I'm voting to grant the variance, let them build a 41-foot barn, because I'm completely ignoring the law. And if that's what you want to say, that's fine. But I think that's the only way you can vote for the variance in this case. Unless you're seeing something I'm not.
Well, when you say violating the law, what we're violating is the town ordinance that says it has to be 35 feet.
Right.
Because the character of the town needs 35.
You're saying, hey, I don't care about this
It's
ordinance,
not state law, it's the ordinance.
it's the ordinance.
And just to be, you can tell me, the case law you cite, how many of those were brought forth, the municipality itself, or were brought by the person who was denied all the way to court? Because the one you mentioned,
Wait.
it sounds like the,
I think all of these were affirmed, so I think it's the landowner who's appealing all of that.
yeah, so it's not,
It's not the town who's got rules of this. I do not know the answer to the question. I mean, if we rule to give them a variance and we all just say, hey, we're gonna ignore the law, we're gonna ignore the ordinance, we're gonna give them the variance. I don't know if the town of Readfield can then appeal our decision.
Or will.
Well, there's.
Or will.
Or will, yes, right. We
I personally
definitely,
don't have a problem. I understand what you're saying, I can read.
I personally don't have.
Uh,
I think it's a good idea. And just for new members, we have had members in my tenure. I think I started in 2018. And we had a busy couple of years at the beginning of my tenure.
The morashes,
And then it has gotten a more reasonable pace recently. But we've had decisions where, like this, where the law indicates only one way to go. The facts as we understand them, there's only one way to interpret it. And members have said, no, I'm not gonna go with that. I'm gonna vote the other against that. That's part of. It's happened in the past. I don't know if we've had a decision where a majority have gone against the ordinance, have openly gone against the ordinance. I'm ignoring the ordinance. I think the applicants are nice for giving the variance, even though it doesn't qualify. We've never had where we've actually done. I don't think.
No, we came close, and we'd had
Come
one
close.
vote, we were one vote away from
Right.
open on the
Right.
on the one thing. But I think the problem is that for a lot of us, myself included, sometimes these rules seem kind of silly or counterproductive or random or whatever, and whatever the case, not necessarily this case, but you know, so it's for a common sense thing, you think, this is silly, why can't we do this? But
I agree. I think a lot of law, I think.
a lot of laws
just
like that,
seems so arbitrary.
yeah,
We're talking
arbitrary,
about 35 feet.
arbitrary is a good
So,
word.
Can I ask a question? Sure. So the other facility is that in Readfield? The
I think
big
it's
white-
on the line,
the
but I
Big,
think
big white
it's-
building?
Yeah.
Do you know if that's in Readfield?
I think none of you is.
It is in
It's,
Readfield.
address is Readfield.
So then how high is there
It could be great. how-
It's very high.
But before the wind was blowing.
for the range?
All the, a couple of Kent Hill buildings. So those are pretty tall. Three-story dorm, you know.
Big white barn on our road,
Churches,
probably.
yeah, right.
There's a big white barn.
The big white barn is
For the
definitely
doctor's
over
office,
35
Yeah.
feet, where the yoga studio is.
So,
I'm at a loss for words about, the responsibility to interpret the information appropriately and vote correctly. When it makes sense. Dr. Lewis.
My thought was, we, agree to give a variance, send a message to the board of selectmen that we need to change the zoning ordinance.
That could be
Find it
a recommendation.
unreasonable.
Would you say that?
I said that could be a recommendation within our decision.
Yes. I mean, if we,
Because there's all kinds of laws that are on the books, you're not supposed to do X, Y, Z from 18 or 13 because of X, Y, Z. And they fall by the wayside.
this just seems like, because it's not an 80-story building, okay, it's not, we're talking 5 feet. And I don't know, I guess I asked why, where did 35 feet come from? Character thing, well, who does the character of the town, 35 feet? What does that mean?
So I think, Al,
I know what it
if
is.
that 35 feet was sitting in the view shed of 4 or 5 houses, that would be complaining about it, that's probably where that kind of thing comes from. One thing I'm thinking about is, and this may sound really reaching, I think climate itself, as it changes, is affecting how we use property. And, I've heard from the applicants about storms of different character and so on and so forth affecting your business. John was mentioning solar, which, by the way, I take umbrage to some of the things he said, not that I'm a solar developer. I think climate is dictating a little bit how we might use land, or how it might be profitable to use land. And so that's kind of one of the things I'm looking at here, is land is a changing character, it's a changing commodity, and therefore the profit, if you will, from that land is going to change, and somehow being able to vary the abilities of people to make that profit. And I realize this, we're talking, a canoe on an island is very different than a business, I may understand that. But are we harming the viability of the profitability of this property by not granting the variance? Especially with the changing circumstances that, or challenging and changing circumstances that exist. Like I said, it's a little esoteric, but that's
It
kind of
is. It is.
It's a thread I'm pulling at.
No, I like it, I mean, and you can't help but think the big ideas, but I really don't think that's the purpose of the Board of Appeals. We are here to apply the facts as they've been presented to the land ordinance that we have. And I agree, it seems arbitrary, a lot of this stuff seems arbitrary, a lot of the law seems arbitrary, not just municipal law. But what if it's your house someday? And the town just starts giving out variances willy-nilly? And then all of a sudden it's your house, and maybe it's a pot farm or something you really hate, or something you really love, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think there's a way to amend the ordinance to kind of deal with that, and what Bruce said, what they're implying, it's not just the height, it's also the location. What's it next to, what's it near, I mean, what it's like. You have a house with beautiful view, and I plop in a house that's 60 feet high, and the view's gone, that's a different thing than we're talking about, to me. You know, we're talking about the building, that's nothing really directly around it. You know,
I was thinking, what I was trying to get at is if the structure was actually different than the block was different. And then, you know, then I'm saying, well, this is a temporary structure. This is not a fixed building.
Right.
We're not approving a variance for a building, we're approving a variance for a temporary structure that's movable.
And I don't think I don't think that affects our decision whether it's movable or not. It's a height issue.
Sure.
It's a height issue.
Yeah, one of the other duties I have in town kind of, is I chair the open space working group, which is serving for a little bit of time to rewrite the 2006 plan. And I think that's where the height thing, I don't think it's a direct consequence of that 2006 open space plan, but we talk about view sheds, and that's one of the things. The other thing we talk about a lot is agricultural value in land, and how important that is to Readfield as well. There's evidence here that I think has been presented that this horse, this is an agricultural use, okay? It's also, I mean, it's kind of almost multi-use, if you will. It's not strictly agricultural in nature, but, you know, if you grow crops, you sell them in a barn stand or something. So if you shelter horses and feed them and so on and so forth, you need to exercise them. So I see that part of it. So I think that's a value in Readfield. And this kind of fits that open space criteria that we're looking at to preserve agricultural value in Readfield and not seed any, if you will.
And it's just, that point is just a little off the mark, because what we're looking at is cannot yield a reasonable return. And what we have is a business which, according to witnesses, which I found credible, it's a successful business and it's a growing business, as it is. So that's a reasonable return right there. So,
You know, reasonable return is such an unusual, hard thing to talk about, okay? My wife Cricket, we had a really nice, successful business here with Marie's Whole Foods and, you know, all of that. And it was very successful, and she enjoyed doing it very much, but the physical size of the building made it such that you could only do so much business in that space. And she is, you know, if she hired someone to help her to do the more business she could do, there wasn't enough space to really, you know, generate a profit from that space.
right,
So, what a reasonable return is completely different to me versus Les versus Ralph, Henry, George. So I think that's a hard
yeah, and
test.
we can't, our reasonable return is just for our land use ordinance.
Okay.
We all know, we all have in our head what is reasonable, and we all know that a 41-foot bar is reasonable in our hearts of heart. But we have a term of art here.
I'm sorry?
We have a term of art. It has reasonable return in this context has a very specific meaning.
So if Henry were here, right, Henry has brought a lot of very positive information to the plot process.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm, you know, at one point he says, well, what are we really doing here? I mean, what are we really doing, you know? And in this case, we're not overturning the decision of the planning board. And we've been in some of these situations where we're really hamstrung because that's our charged responsibility. To not enter new information, to not go against,
Right?
unless there's a reason that they did something incorrectly.
That's our normal appeal process. That's
And
what
this
John's
seems to be something that's somewhat different in respect.
So it's different in that we get to invent the facts. We get to say what the land is like and what's the building. But we are restricted as to what reasonable return means. It's not what we think in our minds and our heart and mind. It has a very specific meaning for this land use ordinance.
So I'll start. I'm willing to grant the variance. I would want to write in that variance a recommendation to the select board to look at the height requirement and to redefine that and to redefine it in relation to view sheds.
So my question
and other
with that is,
factors.
why
May I
not go
finish first? Okay, and I'm pulling on all those various threads that I've used. Is that ignoring, the spirit of the law?
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know, because
Well,
in this
you're
case,
legislating, you're trying to change the statute or the ordinance that's governing us. You're trying to change that mid-hearing.
or I'm trying to use the power of the Board of Appeals, because we've been granted that power, is one of the stop gates along the pathway of taking a look at something.
I would say that's totally an appropriate use of, Board of Appeals power. If
Okay,
you want to change the land use ordinance, you do it the normal political manner. You don't do it through the Board of Appeals.
okay.
You go to the select board.
Mhm.
You put a petition in. If we vote, yeah,
Can I ask a question?
go for it.
Can this appeals board make a recommendation to the select board that they review the height requirement?
It's kind of inappropriate. We're just interpreting the land use order. If you want the select board to do it, show up at the next select board meeting and do it. Say, hey, we just had a crazy hearing in appeals.
So not as part of this.
Situation.
What's that?
Case by case situation. This case applies to this business.
Absolutely.
In that case.
And the law that's in existence today.
Right, brushed.
Right.
For everybody to come say.
It's just, you know,
So now can we say what we think
sure,
in the
you can
discussion?
do that anytime.
Okay, all right.
I'm not limiting anything.
So I'm unhappy that the burden of proof necessary to give the variance may appear not to be there for this situation. And it pains me from that standpoint, because I think that the height restriction, that is the complication, is not appropriate in this condition. I appreciate what you said about the changing elements of the land and different things like that. And as far as the processes that are in place and the way that business is conducted, then I would want to not grant the variance because of the rules that we're supposed to operate under. But I'd like the appeals board to make a recommendation that the select board review these ordinances.
I'm definitely out for that. We can make a specific in our reasoning section. We can make a specific statement, its own paragraph that says, we recommend that the select board review the height restriction and raise it. So whatever we think is, what do we think it should be? If we want to put that recommendation in. Well, it's really generally not in a, for a quasi judicial body like ourselves. We just take the existing law we have, the facts that are before us, and we apply them. We're not really legislating, we're not like the planning.
But that's what the select,
Yes.
right? So the select board has that power.
Absolutely.
But that's not the process of one.
And we can put that in our decision,
Mhm.
but we really shouldn't. Our decision should be limited to the facts of this case and not contain
I'm
unnecessary.
happy to go to the select board myself as a person and mention this. And probably is going to somehow be in the open space report, but as you know, and as the applicants probably realize, hats hung on those books need probably years.
Maybe not, but you're right.
Hats hung on those books probably need years.
It'll take a long time.
They take longer time.
From 35 to 40.
So for example,
Why is that?
the warrant's probably set for this coming June election.
Right.
The select board tends not to want to have warrant articles on November elections for various reasons. So you're really talking about if they were to change their height ordinance and that they would want to hold public hearings and get some input.
Right.
And from probably conservation, from the public, from the planning.
And that's
board.
how you make good decisions.
Well, I realize that is how you make
Right.
decisions.
Like, do we really know that there's not a fire department reason why it's 35? There could be. I mean, even in the commercial zone where almost anything goes, it's 35 feet.
At the legislature, okay, they're having a big problem with the legislature and the towns, trying to open space, build affordable housing, and there is so much that's going on about these rules and regulations that it's really surprising. You know, they're talking about going from subdivision being the 5th lot, not the 3rd lot. They're talking about lot size changes, public water and sewer. Why can't we build affordable housing where people can walk to work and live in town? So I mean, there's this whole thing is happening
Right.
in a big way down at the legislature each and every day. They're down there.
And that's big policy questions.
But it also impacts all the towns too.
It does. But our simple question is, on these facts, with this ordinance, can we take the arena down 10 feet each way, and we have two horse, two rider arena, still get indoor time? You still get your indoor arena, and comply with the ordinance. That may happen, but that may not happen at the same time.
Right, so that may not be, that that's interested in doing that, put money into a 2 versus 3. So I look at it, I wanna look at it as more of a common sense approach, and yes, I know what laws have said and all that. But I look at that economically as well, of having 11 customers and having, margins of profit being what it is. Next year, cost of hay, you may say we can't do this anymore.
Right.
You know, does my decision want to hinge on the fact that they can or cannot make this work? Readfield is a great community, and I think we need to have more things in Readfield to bring people into this community. So that's different than the Winthrops or Manchesters or the Litchfields. So
But
anyway,
I don't think there's evidence that we heard today that this business is gonna go out of business if they don't get this.
no, but the margins of 11 people and 11 customers is thin. Okay,
But there's a profit on this business. There is a business making, however big, it's a profit.
If
They
they want
describe it
to-
as successful.
yes,
You know how high above the lot that you row your boat to without a motor? And you store your boat on, that case? You see the difference? The court is saying that the rowboat case is a reasonable return. And the
So,
facts we have are so much more rich.
but we don't know if this fellow wanted to put a road across somebody's property to get to his land. And they said, no, you can't do that, so I can't use it, well, you can row a boat to it, and that's reasonable.
Yes,
So we don't know that fact, this was huge.
Well, yeah, we're assuming that you cannot drive to it.
Hmm.
We're assuming all you can do is row your boat to it.
Yeah. Which,
A non-motorized rowboat. That gives you a reasonable return. We have a house, we have a profitable business that's trying to get more profitable. We are so far out above reasonable. Do you see the analogy I'm trying to make?
Just, I will interrupt a little bit. First of all, Will, you're really good at keeping us on task and reminding us of those things that we need to be reminded of. So I do appreciate that. So I've owned a couple businesses. Those profit lines that you're talking about, where you start, they diverge in different directions depending on circumstances. So you may say we're above here and this is where we can go, but it may be going this way.
But we have evidence in this case from the applicants saying 15 years they've been here,
Mhm.
that it's been growing and successful.
Mhm. And they're probably at the point where, so this is conjecture, obviously. And I'm trying to base it on what was presented and said. But they're probably at the point where other expenses will harm the business without adding to their customer base.
I didn't hear any evidence about that.
No, I told you that was
But
conjecture.
we have to limit ourselves to what the evidence is.
Mhm. And based on that evidence, I think that's a reasonable conjecture.
Okay.
I think the changing nature of the land that you mentioned is something I hadn't thought about. And when I look at everything that's all going on and land going to all kinds of purposes that aren't agricultural. And each and every day, I see stuff that makes no sense. And especially most recently, every time we turn on the news, nothing makes any sense. So, it seems to me like there's enough evidence and enough view on the board to move forward with granting variance.
Do most people think that they would vote for the variance at this point?
I think I would.
Because we need to.
I think I would.
So we got 4 versus.
because I think
Okay.
the language,
So we should-
B1A is, I don't understand all you said, but it's nebulous.
You would vote for the variance.
I was happy.
I
to
would
be
vote for the
challenged.
variance, and I would also recommend, yes, we could individually go in front of the selectmen, but I think coming from the board saying this is a difficult case and that the board should direct, or the board itself, look at that height requirement and add some specificity to it. It's not just the height. Like I said earlier, this structure where it is, I don't see a problem. I do see a problem if you obscure someone's view, you build a building in the wrong place next to too high, whatever. I can see a lot of problems with that, right? I see problems with having structures so high, we have the fire. I see a lot of problems, okay? So it's not black or white.
Okay. So with that in mind, if we think we're gonna vote for the variance, we need to address the other 3 elements in the test. This is the hardest one. So if we think that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return, then we should go on to the other ones, which are the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. Do we think that the property in question is unique in that way?
Unique in the neighborhood. That's,
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what that's compared to.
The need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. So like, should we allow everybody on the street a 35, a 40-foot structure?
Well, if that were the case, would everybody come to us to change for the variance? Because it still hasn't changed.
They probably would, once we set a precedent like this, where we're ruling, where we're willing to ignore the ordinance.
I'm looking at also, this is not a structure that somebody's gonna be going up on the second floor and see a child in a fire. This is a fabric structure that has nobody on it at all. This is a matter of just, it's like a Quonset hut, basically. There's no.
I also think that the fact that it is a temporary structure and it is a movable structure also gives reason for consideration. You know, we're not building a structure.
Well, I mean, it's a building, but it just can be built.
Right, which makes it different than like this building here.
Wow, don't they both obscure the same, your vision?
Is it a vision? It's not a vision thing, is it? It's not 35 feet of vision thing.
I don't know.
Seems to be an arbitrary thing that's in the ordinance that no one can clarify.
I mean, it might have been based on tower building.
Right,
for all
no
we know.
one here can tell us how they came up with 35 feet,
Okay,
whatever reason it was.
so do we think that the need of the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood?
I would say yes, it is unique and different than
Any other discussion on that element, or shall we move to number 3? Number 3 is the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
So I think that's true from the drawings, and the siting. I think the witness that mentioned the water runoff, that is a concern. It sounds to me like, there was a cooperation, promise made there. That's probably outside our sphere. The amount of water is going to occur whether or not that barn is there or riding facility is there or not. Obviously, it's a channeling of that water becomes the issue. So getting back to your point, would you reread that?
The granting of a variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
I don't think it will.
Any other debate on that element? The last element is the hardship is not the result of the action taken by the applicant or the prior owner.
Could you say that again?
The hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or the owner. And I think the hardship is the hardship of not having an agreement. Do we think that the applicants meet that element? Just to understand that one.
I'm not sure I understand the element. Yeah,
I'm not sure I understand. Yeah.
I mean, they're building a barn, aren't they creating the situation by trying to build a barn that's too high? Isn't it them? I don't know.
I mean,
No,
you can say that about a successor operator of that land, I could say, but I don't know.
I think it's like, so you want a boundary. If the former owner, if Ruth had built, it had put piles and piles of fill there, and they wanted to build on top of that, then maybe the prior owner had something to do with the height. Yeah. Or like the prior owner built too close to the property line. And now they want to just expand their house a little bit. And they want a setback variance, but the prior owner caused a problem, or was a problem, something like that.
The issue that was brought up by the butter about the drainage and the effect of the ball field with the school and all that, that's something that
It seems like that's select board.
that person would go to the,
It seems like a great issue for the select board.
so that's where that would be addressed.
I think so.
I agree, I don't. I'm not saying it is a problem, I'm not saying that, because,
Can I say
Imagining what-
something? I'm not saying anything against their barn. I feel the town should be, like, I don't think it's their problem that I'm getting.
Ms. Moore,
It's because of stuff set up by the town.
yeah, thanks for that. And also the domains, thank you. You both jumped in during our deliberations. You're not supposed to.
Right.
It's no big deal. We'll still take your statement. But yeah, I mean, it is an issue for us. I think there's some evidence that the barn might increase the water. I don't think it's super strong in our factual record. I don't think there's direct evidence that this barn is gonna create more runoff, but I think we can assume that it could. But
perhaps it could, but it sounds like there's a problem right now with what, the way everything is.
it sounds like it's road drainage, and it sounds like that's a town thing.
And should be addressed.
Right.
And given, again, I'm not sure, again, the location of this, if one side made everything that sloped the other direction anyways, I don't know, but to me, it's a whole different issue, it's an issue that needs to be corrected. I don't know that the building of this structure would impact it.
And it's not the building of the structure, it's us
No,
granting a height variance, increasing the
Right,
height variance by 5 feet. I don't think that's gonna affect, whether the barn is 35 feet or 40 feet, I don't think that's gonna affect the drainage. But,
No, it's the square footage of the roof itself and everything else, which way does the water flow off of that?
but whether it's a 35-foot roof or
No,
40, I don't think
no,
measurably it's gonna affect.
no.
But it's an issue, and I appreciate Ms. Willier coming to today's hearing and letting us know. I just hope that she or someone else goes to the select board, so South Road needs the drainage update. So we have debated all 4 of the elements of the variance. Are we ready to put this to a vote?
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
So does the, do we have to find on all 4 of those?
Well, no, we just
You don't-
discussed it.
That's right.
We have to evaluate with
Okay.
those in mind.
Yes. In past decisions, we've just said, the
Okay.
board concludes that the applicant meets for this. And for these reasons. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll say or move that we grant the variance. And hopefully that was our second, and I do have a discussion point that I'll mention afterwards.
I'll second.
My discussion point is, will the warning on not legislating, I think it's well thought out, and I do appreciate that you pushed back on that. Because it does cause me to think, and I have sat on the select board as Al has before, so I'm somewhat aware when, I mean, that board sits occasionally in a quasi judicial role, on rare occasions. So I do understand that, and I've kind of been through that MAA training in regards to that and so forth. So I appreciate the pushback and comment and redirection that you gave us on that. So you said, are we willing to do this and just ignore that law? And I guess I am willing to say that I'm willing to bypass that on what I think is a series of common sense thoughts that I have. And is that legislating? Perhaps. But I'm also willing to mitigate that legislating by taking Al's suggestion of mentioning as a board to the select board that they at least have that as a topic of discussion. I mean, I don't know if they'll do anything with that. But we find that to be, I guess I would say we find that to be arbitrary. Arbitrary is the wrong word. There, it probably, I won't argue with myself anymore on it. I just think it needs to be looked at. Probably needs to be different things in different places in town.
So we have a motion to grant and it's been seconded. Before we vote on that, can we talk about, how we would word the decision? So here are some, from my notes, these are some findings of fact. These are generally not controversial. They're generally a paragraph in a decision that takes up one sentence. And so these are proposed ones that I've scribbled down here. And let me know if you agree or disagree with any of them.
And do you generally offer that yourself?
Well,
As chair,
yeah,
with our input?
yes, we generally should do it as a board. So that's why we're trying to do it. So these are proposed findings of fact. The domains own and run a natural habitat horse boarding farm at 52 South Road, Readfield, Maine. The property is about 8.53 acres. The domains have run this farm for over 15 years. The domains propose an arena that's 40 feet and 1¼ inches tall. The domains have a horse riding business that currently has 11 boarded horses. The domains business has been successful and growing for the last 5 years. The property contains a residence, 2 or 3 run-in sheds for horses, a 2-mile-long path for horses. The property is half field and half wooded. And the final finding of fact is land use ordinance for Readfield, Article 7, Section 6 indicates that the maximum height for a structure is 35 feet. So those are the facts as I see them that we've heard here today.
Could I suggest one additional
Sure.
description in one of the facts? I think we should mention that the structure is canvas and frame.
And movable.
And movable. And
It's aluminum truss frame with canvas.
yeah, I believe that's what it is.
That's correct.
See, we didn't make the facts up. Everyone said.
Well, we're not doing any worse than the US Supreme Court.
What, you're really keeping up with us?
Okay, any other findings of fact you'd like to add? Does it sound like that's a good representation of what we heard here today and the written materials as well?
Are you going to cite?
So the next section will be reasoning.
Okay.
So those are the facts. Now it's reasoning. And the first paragraph will be very similar to our past variance decisions. It just has a whole bunch of our land use, our appeals board ordinances saying that you can appeal a height restriction. That's in our ordinance. You can bring this variance request. And then it'll list the 4 criteria that we just went through for a variance, which is in our appeals board ordinance. generally in these cases, we as a board would list the case law indicating what reasonable return is. About.
Has that been common practice of this board since you said?
Yeah, well, and something like this. Because there's court, the court has opined on it. Usually the court doesn't opine whether you can turn a barn into a juke joint. But they have made decisions on this specific issue. So that's the law. The law is is basically the 4 criteria we went through for a variance.
Will, is that the only case law you found that related to
No,
this?
there's tons.
There are tons.
Oh, yeah.
So we can go on an extensive search if we want.
Oh,
Who
Okay.
wants to spend the day in a law library? I guess it's all online now, isn't it?
yeah. I think you have to pay for it. So that's pretty much it. And then and then I guess the big question is, so whoever, the municipal people who will, the main municipal association, the town of Readfield, city manager, everyone who does municipal law, they're gonna wanna know, hey, how'd they get above reasonable return? How did the Readfield Board of Appeals get around reasonable return? That's what this decision is all about.
Well, and then who will take the next step?
Like I
The
said,
applicant won't, in this case.
they likely will not appeal.
That's correct. And
We could have an
the town-
abutter appeal.
our town attorney, Maine Municipal Association said we're gonna have,
I don't think the Maine Municipal Association can appeal. I think the select board could be a party to this.
they potentially could, but we're also saying we need to look at it. This is a difficult decision, complicated issue. We need to look at the, land use ordinance and the whole issue. We are saying that. That's why I want this.
See, it's not a complicated issue, so.
Well,
Like I've been trying to say that the rowboat and the oars being stored on the property compared to what we have in front of us.
no, I'm talking
are
about,
so
I'm
different.
talking about the papers.
Yes, it's so different. It's not about whether we think the barn should be built. We all, to a person here, want that barn to be built. But the law is super clear here. There's no way that the applicant has proven a lack of reasonable return. They have a going business and a residence on the property. That is the,
I don't know as that's, I don't know as I agree with you that they've proven that it's a successful business and can provide.
they said it's profitable, it's growing and profitable. For 5 acres.
But it,
Okay,
Business is always about-
let's take the
business
business.
is always about potential.
Let's take the business and push it aside. There's a residence there on 8.5 acres of
But it's
commercially
zoned
zoned
commercial.
property
So,
in a really attractive area of Readfield. I mean, what if they just put it for sale right now? They could get a good amount of money. That would be so we need to address how we came to reasonable return. And as I suggested earlier, I think we should say we are ignoring the case law on reasonable return, and we're just granting the application. We believe that they should have a 40-foot barn, and we are ignoring the law, the ordinance, law, those are interchangeable. Ordinance sounds kind of, but we need to put that in the decision. And it sounds like to a person, we are, if you're voting for the variance, I think you are ignoring the ordinance. And that's fine. I'm not saying that's
I'd like to
wrong.
find a gentler word than ignoring.
Disregarding.
No, it's not gentler, that's harsher.
So I just, I've been on this board and I've gone through different things, and, we had that situation where the people wanted to do something down by the lake, and then They came in here and they showed, demonstrated really well done, orchestrated where everyone else was able to do something, but they weren't.
Right.
And I happen to have felt that they made a very good case. But in that particular case, it wasn't about what was done in the past. It wasn't what took place with all these other places. And it wasn't about anything other than the planning board had not made an error. And therefore, then the rules apply. So I understand that.
Right.
But I thought that their case was almost to the point where they could say that we think we're being treated differently than other
Well,
people.
well, they were, because they weren't a resident. And the ordinance says if you're not a resident.
We never really reached that. On the Marashes, we never.
Oh, wait,
really-
I'm talking about the one in the last,
Oh, the chamber.
yeah, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm talking about the people down by the lake that want to build a big house.
The Marashes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
The big
sorry.
garage.
Right, but it was, in my particular, as sitting there listening to all of it, right, it looked to me like there was discrimination and they were being treated differently than a lot of the other properties that had something done. But my role was not to do anything other than just to determine whether or not, and the planning board was incorrect for one reason or another. In this particular case, we don't have that same situation in that regard.
I agree, but you still have reasonable return with Mike's demonstration. You've gotta address that. You've got the rowboat down here, and you've got residents and the horse farm up here. And they are so far, this is such a wealthy, reasonable return. And it's so far above the rowboat and the paddles down here. So we've got to say why we're actually doing this. We're saying this profitable business cannot get a reasonable return. It's worse off than if all they could do is row their boat to their.
So what you're saying that we have to put in something that says that,
We're just ignoring the first element. Would that be better?
we are not giving the first element the
We
weight.
know what it is.
The first element is not being given the weight
I mean,
that,
But we know that the first element is hard and it's meant to kill variances. And we're okay with that.
I think it's also hard to determine where the pivot point is for a business and a return on a property. And that's kind of what I described.
And that's more the general feeling, but we have a very specific definition in this land use ordinance.
So I'm giving you some language of why we're picking them.
Right. Okay, so okay. I mean, I'll send the decision, so we can look at it,
Mhm.
but we need to address that. And so, as I've kind of facilitated here, let me make clear that I think it's absolutely incorrect for us to grant the variance. I think it is, we are abdicating our duty when we come here as the Board of Appeals and we say, I know reasonable return is hard. I know that these people don't meet it, and I'm gonna give them the variance anyway. That's exactly what we're not supposed to do. We just apply the facts to the law we have, and it stinks sometimes. I agree with Mr. Blue, and I think they should have the 41-foot barn. Who cares? No one's ever gonna see this barn, other than a few people.
no, I
They turn their head.
I care.
No, yes, no, and I care too.
All right, well, okay.
But no one really is, in the big picture, I would love to have a barn, but it is exactly what we are not supposed to do when we come here and we ignore the ordinance. Sometimes we do, hey,
well,
that's our choice.
I didn't ask the question. The names, can they go without this for another year? Did anybody ask that?
No one did.
I don't think they did, but I think it's fair to say they can build a smaller barn
They could,
with a lower roof.
because, again, we say, you gotta relook at the height requirement for the selectmen. And they do that, and it was pointed out, takes time to get things on the warrant, changes and all of that. And again, I think it should not just be a number, it should be the height and other factors, and I don't know what it does, or maybe it does, but, yes, they could build a smaller building. Well, I don't know if they can, because I don't know enough about the engineering of that structure. Can you pull it in a little bit? Can you reduce the height of the
But when
stairwell?
when we get into the weeds like that, we're off the question. The question is rowboat versus.
No,
a
no, no,
proper
no, the
business.
question, I would say, no, don't grant it if I knew they could build something different. And maybe that was up to them to come and say we could.
I think it's improper for us to let those emotions affect our decisions.
It's not an emotion, because you could right now say, no, we're not gonna grant it. And, so be it, and then they would, right, and then there's two things. Or the select board change the ordinance, build a different building.
And that seems harsh, but that is not our decision to make, whether it's harsh or not. We just apply the facts that we have in front of us. But I think I think as a board, we want to grant the variance. I just want us to be clear that we are ignoring reasonable return. And that should be in our decision. If we do.
Okay, if that's proper, then put it in the decision.
Yeah, I mean, we put it in our decision.
Yeah, I mean, put in a decision and say there was discussion in regards to that. Whatever. I guess the decision needs to be
Well, I think all six of us know that we're ignoring
a
reasonable
consensus
return.
edition.
We're ignoring that part.
Well, I think ignoring is a strong word. You know, we're putting other factors in play.
But you've got to get over the reasonable return. That's what you got to get over. The other factors, I'm all there with you on the other factors, but
Does it have to meet all four of those?
yes. And normally for variances, it stops after reasonable return. Especially in this case, it's a little easier if it's your own personal house that you're living in, a little more wiggle room. But this isn't a house, this is a barn, this is a horse race. So you get the hard reasonable return. All right. What do you say?
It could be, hearing nothing, it's very quiet.
I doubt it.
I got it too.
Sounds like they're gonna get their variance, and no,
Yeah,
you're.
they said the municipalities would be all, how can Readfield do that? They can't do that. See, all I have with the term reasonable return is this, and you cited the case law, is that, well, okay. But what is, it's a particular case, this guy owns an island, he wanted to build a mansion, it's too big for the island, the town said, no, you can't do it. Or you want, maybe it was you want to build a bridge, I want to build a bridge from mainland to this island, you can't do it. For any number of reasons, and the court said, still have value, because it's an island, it's worth a lot of money, but you gotta get there by the water, through the water. And because it's an island and a lake or whatever, or an ocean, whatever it is, it's worth a lot of money. Reasonable amount of money, but if you can't do stuff on it, it's worth less reasonable amount of money. So what does reasonable mean?
Reasonable means the practical loss of all beneficial use of the land.
Of all benefits, all benefits.
That is,
That
I
is
keep
pretty-
putting my arms up, this is so, why it's. All right. So I think we've all said our piece, right? Anybody else wants? to beat this dead horse?
No,
That
dead
was a poor
horses,
turn.
that was not.
Oh, my God. Oh.
Ah.
Going in a lot.
You don't ever say that.
All right. Anything else? So I think we have a seconded motion that the motion that the application for variance is granted. All in favor, raise your hand. 4, and all against? 2. All right, so the variance passes. I'll send out a copy of the decision to the board members in the next. If you can read it, give me a put that quick. Yeah. So for Ms. Bullier and anyone else, any party aggrieved by this decision, you can seek reconsideration by filing a request for reconsideration with the town clerk no later than May 11th, that's 10 days from today. And whether or not a request for reconsideration is made, any party aggrieved can appeal this decision. And there's a 45-day appeal period. So, I mean, talk to your lawyers, but I wouldn't start building a barn while the appeal period is still going. Because someone could appeal and stop it.
It's what, 45 days?
It's 45 days
There's
from
no
today.
intention of starting.
So just to let you know, someone can appeal it. So, all right, the variance is granted. Anything else before we adjourn? I move that we adjourn.
A second?
All in favor, raise your hand. All right,
Can we,
we're off the record. Oh, hey. Holly, can you press stop on Zoom?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
If you, the computer they got, let's see if I can figure this out.
There's no photos.
Stop video. Okay.
so on this particular application.
Here. With him?
What's that?
You guys select people together?
No, not together, actually.
The person also hired contractors.
I know.
So I think that's. Anyway.
The light.
Was Jack Cohen on the planning board?
He may have. And I said, the road is gravel. And I said, the contracts that share.
Did the light go off? No.
One, break all that, break it all off. That's right. And he said, it could be a bit of it's still gravel.
Well, that's kind of simple. I know. Yeah. Well, it's okay.
You know what I mean? It's like, yes, well, this is, but it was a violation.
It's similar, it's similar.
No longer violation.
Right, I see that. I see that.
I just, yeah, I'm sorry, I know.
I really wish
Well, you're supposed to turn the light off so that it doesn't, so it cools down.
Yeah, I think the fan runs automatically on a lot of these new ones. I would just shut it right off. Okay?
Yeah, go ahead. I hit it, it didn't go off. I tried too.
There. I guess oh. Yeah,
Yeah, it's off.
it is off, but the
Fan
fan
is
is
still running.
available.
Okay.
Yeah, the fan is still working.
I was trying to figure, I thought I turned this thing on, but it didn't go off.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks for coming out.